Good afternoon. Once again, we are with you today to start our Abhidhamma class in English. Today is the eighth session in the second cycle. So, without any further delay, I would like to invite our esteemed teacher, who is Venerable Bulwala Ratanasiri Thero, who will continue the lesson on mental factors. So I invite Most Venerable Bulwala Ratanasiri Thero to start the class. You can unmute your microphone, Reverend Sir, and switch on your video.
Good afternoon. Let's start our Abhidhamma lesson today. We were discussing about Chetasika, mental factors. You know, mental factors have been analyzed into 52 factors. Again, those 52 factors have been categorized into 3 groups. Variable mental factors, Anya Samana 13, unwholesome mental factors, Akusala 14, beautiful mental factors, Sobana 25. In our last lesson, we discussed about variable mental factors. We finished 13 mental factors. Today, I am going to discuss with you unwholesome mental factors, Akusala. They are 14 in number. To discuss these unwholesome mental factors, you must know about the 10 fault of Kammapata and 12 unwholesome consciousness. I think you can remember those 12 unwholesome consciousness. Can you remember those 12 unwholesome consciousnesses? They have been synthesized into 3 categories. Rooted in greed, rooted in anger, and rooted in delusions. So we must understand first those 12 unwholesome consciousness. These 12 unwholesome consciousness, there are varieties. There is variations because of the function of these mental factors, unwholesome mental factors. So these 14 unwholesome mental factors involve in 12 unwholesome consciousness. Because of that, we have the varieties of 12 unwholesome consciousness. These 14 unwholesome mental factors involve doing certain tasks in these consciousnesses when the person engage in unwholesome activity in one of the 10-fold of karma pattern. These mental factors, they involve in those consciousnesses, 12 unwholesome consciousnesses. What are these 14 unwholesome consciousness? First one, moha, delusion. Second one, ahirika, shamelessness. Third one, anuttappa, fearless. Fourth one, udatta, conceit. Next one, lobha, greed, and ditti, wrong views, mana, conceit. Dosa, hatred, issa, envy, mattariya, avarice, kukkuta, worry, tina, sloth, middha, torpor, vichikitta, doubt. Here the conceit, fourth one, udatta, is not conceit, it is restlessness. Udatta, restlessness. Those are the 14 unwholesome mental factors. These unwholesome mental factors involve in 12 unwholesome consciousness when the person engages in unwholesome activity. Now take the first one, delusion, moha. Moha is a mental factor. Moha is a mental factor that involved in the 12 unwholesome consciousness. You know, in 12 unwholesome consciousness, there are two consciousness rooted in delusion, moha mudika. How many consciousness are there rooted in delusion? Can you remember them? Upekka sahagata, uddata sampayutta, upekka sahagata, vichikitta sampayutta. Consciousness accompanied with joy and associated with restlessness. And another one, associated with doubt, vichikitta. So, as a root, this mental factor functions in the 12 unwholesome consciousness. That's why these 12 consciousness have been synthesized into two consciousness rooted in delusions. Moha. What is moha? The delusion. Delusions, that is, in one sense, we can say ignorance, not knowing the reality of the phenomena without correct understanding of the subject matter. That is moha. Moha. When person has some wrong views or ignorance or misunderstanding, he tend to engage in unwholesome activities because of he get cheated by others. Other people cheat him by giving wrong views. Because of that, he may engage in unwholesome activities or the 10-fold of karma patha. That is delusion. For instance, a person who has delusion in his consciousness, he thinks, he misunderstands that dukkha, now sensuous pleasure. Sensuous pleasure is not suffering. It is pleasurable. It is pleasure. In that way, he may think because of his delusions. So if there is this mental factor, delusion in consciousness, people can't understand the reality of phenomena. Because of that, they engage in unwholesome activities. They perform akusala karma. Second one, ahirika, shamelessness. Ahirika means there is no shame to do uh, wrong things. There is no shame to engage in unwholesome activity in the person's mind. He tend to do any kind of unwholesome activity because he does not have shamelessness. The shamelessness is known as divine Dhamma, Deva Dhamma. In Deva Dhamma Jataka story, this Ahirika has been known as divine Dhamma, divine Dhamma, Deva Dhamma. Because of Ahirika, people tend to do any kinds of misbehavior. He engaged in any kind of misbehavior. Now think of the animals like dogs, buffaloes. They are familiar to us. Did they do any kinds of activity in open because of those ahirika, shamelessness, no shame in their mind? So that is the mental factor that enforce the person to do unwholesome activity. Ahirika, shamelessness. Then fearless, anuttappa. When people does not have any fear in his consciousness to commit unwholesome activity or in tenfold of karmapata. He tend to engage in those unwholesome activity because there is no fear in his consciousness. What is the fear that we have to create to avoid in doing unwholesome activities? We believe in karma and vipaka as Buddhists. If we engage in unwholesome karma, we have to repent or we have to bear result, the unwholesome result, painful result because of that. When people engage in tenfold of karmapata during his lifetime, like killing beings, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and lying, and so on. When people engage in those tenfold of karmapata, because of his shamelessness or because of his fearlessness, he engaged in those tenfold of karma path. We know as Buddhists, when we engage in unwholesome activities, after the death, we will be born in hell as a result of karma, akusala karma. We will be born in spirit world or petaloka as a ghost, and we have to face a lot of troubles, and we have to suffer from pain in there. In that way, we have to think. We must create a fearlessness. We must create fearlessness or anuttappa. We must create fear to engage in wholesome activities. Because of that fearlessness, anuttappa, people tend to do so many unwholesome activities. In Balapandita Sutta, Buddha has explained about the punishment given by the leaders in the hell, apaya. Buddha has explained it. By understanding those things, a person can create fear to engage in unwholesome activities. So if people don't believe in these stories, Peta and Vimanavattu, if they don't believe in Petavattu, the stories about Petas, there is fearlessness, anuttappa, to engage in tenfold of karma path. Because of that, they commit sins or unwholesome activities, and they will be born in hell. That is anuttappa. So this shamelessness, ahirika, fearlessness, anuttappa, both are known as divine Dhamma, Deva Dhamma, divine Dhamma. In Deva Dhamma Jataka story, Buddha has explained these two: shamelessness, ahirika, fearlessness, anuttappa, as divine Dhamma. Because the person tend to do wholesome activities because of shamelessness and fearlessness. Then restlessness, uddatta. Where can you find this consciousness, mental factor? What is the consciousness which has this mental factor, restlessness? Can you remember? At the beginning of the lesson, I told you about the consciousness, unwholesome consciousness rooted in delusion. Upekka sahagata, uddatta, සෝමනස්ස සහගත, උපේක්ඛා සහගත, උද්ධච්ච සම්පයුක්ත චිත්ත. So, rooted in delusions, we find these uddatta, restlessness. Restlessness means your mind, there is no your concentration, there is no mindfulness. Your consciousness takes so many objects. Because of that, you can't develop your manasikara. There is restlessness. Without manasikara, you can't engage in any task. Now, in one consciousness rooted in illusions, uddatta is there because of the misunderstanding. Because of the misunderstanding, you have so many ideas, so many concepts, so many thoughts that you are going to do. Because of that misunderstanding, that is restlessness. You can't do any task in your pure mind because of that restlessness. It happens due to delusions. Then greed, lobha. Now again, we'll come to the 12 wholesome consciousness. Can you remember? Where can you find this greed, lobha, mental factor as a root? So this mental factor functions as a root in the unwholesome, 12 unwholesome consciousness. How many unwholesome consciousness are there rooted in greed? Can you remember? There are 8 consciousness rooted in greed. When the person engaged in tenfold of kampata, having this greed as a mental factor in his unwholesome consciousness, there arise the varieties of 8 unwholesome consciousness in his mind. That is greed, lobha, sōmanassa sahagata, ditthigata, sampayutta, asankarika. The first one. In that way, you can remember sōmanassa sahagata, ditthigata, sampayutta, sasankarika. Sōmanassa sahagata, ditthigata, vipayutta, asankarika. Sōmanassa sahagata, ditthigata, vipayutta, sasankarika. Then upekkha. Upekkha sahagata, ditthigata, sampayutta, asankarika, then sasankarika. So these varieties comes because of the involvement of these mental factors, these 14 mental factors. The in the consciousness rooted in greed, they engage those mental factors. You can see now, you can remember these 8 consciousness rooted in greed. Then we'll discuss later with the other mental factors, those 8 consciousnesses rooted in greed. Then we'll come to that consciousness, next one, wrong views, greed, lobha. Then another next unwholesome mental factor is wrong views, ditti. When you analyze consciousnesses, we depend on 5 things. One is phenomena. The other is views, ditti. Other is ditti, views. And the next one is object, feeling and root. Phenomena, views or ditti, object, feeling, root. Depending on those factors, we analyze the consciousness, that is, involvement of these 14 mental factors. Now take the ditti, wrong views. When person engage in 12, engaged in 10 fault of karma pata, there arise those 12 consciousness. If the task is unwholesome, the ditti must be mitta ditti. So here, the wrong views, ditti. Ditti is wrong views. You know, there is right views, samma ditti. Here the wrong views, because these mental factors involved in unwholesome consciousness. Wrong views, ditti. What are the wrong views? The person can think there is no sin, there is no any result, there is no any consequences engaging in killing, engaging in stealing. In that way, people can think if the person engaged in killing animals, there is no any consequence or result, no effect. In that way, the person may think. There is no something called wholesome or unwholesome. Nothing. Nothing wholesome or unwholesome deeds. It is called akiriyavad. Non-action, non-actionist. They don't believe in karma. and vipaka. That is one Mithya-ditti. In that way, the people bear so many wrong views. Because of that wrong views, they tend to engage in tenfold of akusala kammapata. So here, now think of the 12 unwholesome consciousness again. Where can you find this mental factor, ditti? Now, if we think of the consciousness rooted in greed, somanassa sahagata dittigata sampayutta sankara. Dittigata, associated with wrong views. When person killing an animal, now see one consciousness accompanied by joy, associated with wrong views, that is ditti, and unprompted. Now, person is going to kill animal. Wrong views. What is the wrong views? There he thinks no sins or no unwholesome result there in killing animal. That is the wrong view. Dittigata sampai. In that way, then he commit in that unwholesome activity and he perform akusala kamma because of that wrong views. The wrong views is the mental factor here. It engage in the unwholesome consciousness. Second one also with wrong views, second one. Then we'll come to the third one, disassociating from wrong views. Now there in this consciousness, there is no wrong views. He has right views. He knows when he kills, when he steals, when he engage in sexual misconduct, when he engage in lying, he commits sin. He has to face the consequences, result. He knows. So there is no wrong views. Disassociating from wrong views. In that way, we can understand the involvement of ditti. Then we'll come to the next mental factor, unwholesome mental factor. Wrong views. Then another next mental factor is mana, conceit. Mana is conceit. Conceit, it is there are three kinds of conceits. Seyamana, Sadisamana, in that way. Hinamana, in that way, there are three kinds of conceit. Seyamana means a person always thinks he is equal to others, say in intelligence or in wealth or in abilities or knowledge. He thinks I am uh, the same as that person. That is man. I have knowledge in Dhamma or any subject matter like him, like them. In that way, he thinks that is Sayaman, Sadisaman. That is, then when the people thinks that always others are lower than in knowledge or in ability or in wealth or anything, he thinks others are under him. That is the one kind of man. Then when the person thinks others are higher than him, in all ways he thinks about others, they are in high. I am the normal. I am not the capable person. I am not the suitable person to engage with them. That is called conceit, mana. Because of that mana, conceit, people tend to engage in unwholesome activities. That is man. Then hatred, those. Again, you can understand where can you find this mental factor, hatred or those. Again, shall we go to that 12 unwholesome consciousness? There are two consciousness rooted in aversion. Domanassa sahagata ditthigata sampayutta asankarika chitta. One consciousness accompanied by displeasure associated with aversion, unprompted. Those. The second one is sasankarika. Now you can understand this hatred. They are engaged as a root of unwholesome consciousness. There are three roots in unwholesome consciousness: lobha, dosa, moha. Now here, dosa. You can understand now how these mental factor engage in this consciousness. If there is those hatred, there is no joy, domanassa, displeasure, no happiness there. That is domanassa. Then we'll come to issa, the next consciousness. Issa. Issa, the person, Issa means is envy, is jealousy. Issa. The people, some people, they don't like others that they live happily. They don't like other person's happiness. Such a mental factor is called Issa, envy. So if he contains Issa in his consciousness, he can't be happy. He always worried because of Issa. When he live in the society, he compare the other person's way of living. And he worries, I don't have such facilities. They have such and such facilities. I don't have such facilities. He worry he does not like. That is icha. Avarice, material. Material, that is misery. When the person has avarice, material, he is called miser. He don't like a gift or donation. He don't like to engage in alms giving, in donations. Because of that material, he developed his craving. You know, the craving is the cause for suffering. So when the person have this mental factor avarice in his mind, he always developed his craving, greed. He does not engage in donations, avarice. Buddha said, Nave Kadariya Deva Lokam Vajanti. Misers, they can't be born in heaven because they don't engage in donations. There is a story called Kosariya Macharya Millionaire, Sitan. Such persons, they did not spend their money even they are on daily foods, on medicines. They had a lot of money, wealth, property, but because of the mental factor, Macharya is there in their consciousness, they do not spend their money on donations. When the person practicing donations, now his greed is to be counted gradually, So avarice, material must be avoided. Then the next one, worry, kukuche. Kukuche is also saying now he is always worrying. He can't be happy because of this kukuche. he repents by thinking of his former uh, wrong task that done by him. He repents by thinking of his past, his worry, kukkutte. If another one is he does not like the other persons, always that person find out the ill of the other person. The person who bear this mental factor, kukkutte, he can't live in the society, even in his house, even in the family members of his or her family members. There arise a lot of problems, disparities there because of this worry, the kukkutte. Then slot tina midda, that is tina and midda goes together, that is laziness. Laziness to engage in meritorious deeds, that is sloth and torpor. Torpor is distractions of mind. He always, so many excuses he has before to do any task. When he is going to engage in the task, he find out so many excuses, get rid of that task. Tina and mid, sloth and torpor. You know, this sloth and torpor is against with kusala. They are the two of five hindrance. Kamachanda, Vyapada, Tinamita, Udatta, Kukkutte. Udatta and Kukkutte also we discussed. And so these Tina and Midda also in five hindrance that cover the vision of Nibbana. Those are the mental factors, unwholesome mental factors. People getting away from doing wholesome activities. Then the last one, Vichikitta, doubt. This is the mental factor. Again, the person get away from doing wholesome activities. Because of doubt or vichikitta, we tend to engage in 10 unwholesome kammapat, like killing, stealing, sexual misconducting, and lying, slandering. In that way, he engaged in, because of that vichikitta, he has those vichikitta about the Buddha. He suspect the Buddha. He suspect the Buddhahood. He suspects the wisdom of the Buddha. There were some person at that time when the Buddha lived. They said there is no called such persons Buddha or Arahant. So they suspected. So they did not engage in wholesome activities. Then Dhamma, they suspect Dhamma also. The Buddha's Dhamma doctrine. they suspect. Then Sangha also, they suspect in Sangha. And they suspect in their former birth. They suspect whether we had former birth. They suspect. Then they suspect rebirth also. That is called Sasatavada and Ukhedavada. Nihilism and determinism. Sasatavada and Ukhedavada. Because of that, they don't engage in meritorious deeds, wholesome activities. They believe in non-actions, so they tend to do so many unwholesome activities to fulfill their faculties. This is Charvaka materialism. According to the Charvaka materialism, they don't believe in rebirth. So their aim is to have the maximum sensual pleasure in this life. That is doubt there. Then they suspect in the Buddha's middle pathway, Tisiksha, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Morality, concentration, and wisdom. They suspect in this path towards Nibbana. So they don't practice it. Then dependent origination. Paticca Samuppada. Cause and result. The Buddha explained the being and the world depend on this dependent originations. The being and the world have been formed according to the dependent originations, cause and reason. So they don't believe it, they suspect, and sometimes they believe in Creator, Almighty Creator. In that way, doubt is an unwholesome mental factor. If there is such doubt or this mental factor in any consciousness, the person tends to engage in unwholesome activities or tenfold of akusala kamma pata. I think you know tenfold of akusala kamma pata. That is called dasa akusala, 10 fold of unwholesome activities. When people engage in these unwholesome activities, having those 12 wholesome activities with those mental factors, you know how they engage to do their tasks. You know now how these consciousnesses arise and how these mental factors engage in those consciousnesses. And you know how karma and vipaka arise there according to this analyze. You can understand karma and vipaka, kusala karma and akusala karma. How kusala karma and akusala karma arise and how the result arises there. Because of this engagement of these mental factors in the consciousness. You can understand now. I think now the time is up. I have explained the 14 unwholesome mental factors in short. In my next lesson, I hope to explain the next another mental factors, beautiful, wholesome mental factors. Thank you for listening to me. Blessing of the triple beams, we showered upon you. May you attain Nibbana. Thank you again for your cooperation.
Much merit to you, Reverend Sir. We do not have any questions today, but I have a couple. When speaking of mental factors and Chetasikas, and the different types, today we learned 14 new mental factors under the unwholesome mental factor category. And I've heard of two other words. I don't know where they fit into. They are Sahayogi Chetasika and Ani. It was the word was, if I recall it, Aniyata Yogi Chetasika. Are they also kind of categories of mental factors?
I have not found those mental factors. There are 52 mental factors.
Maybe there are different names, or maybe there are categories. I don't know. Maybe it's something that we can discuss in another class. Yeah. So shall we wrap up the session?
Yes, shall we wrap up now?
Okay. So once again, thank you very much, and much merit to you, Most Venerable Bulwala Ratna Siritero, for your valuable time and taking us through especially the Pali words and their meanings and the different types of consciousnesses and mental factors. Those are the topics or Chetasika that we have been discussing so far. And thank you for explaining them with some examples. So we will meet again next week, Saturday, same time, with our 9th Abhidhamma class. Until then, I wish all our listeners a safe and a well week ahead. I'm ending the session now, Reverend Sir.
Okay, right.